Good morning. Today we are starting with the third day of the training. Although we could not do much yesterday, but today we intend going on with our complete 9 to 5 session. So we were talking about project life cycle yesterday. And as far as project life cycle is concerned, I did define it to you that project life cycle is not project management process groups. Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control and close. They are not project lifecycle because these are the processes, the generic process groups in which the project work can be done, and there is a lot of parallelism in the process groups. Project lifecycle is classically sequential in nature. Why I'm saying classically is because one phase has to finish, all the work of that phase has to finish as if I can start the work on the next phase. This will give me a control over the project, and then I'll also be able to manage the risk more appropriately. Although we do understand that by doing so, we may take a bit more time, but at the cost of, gaining more control and reducing the risk, that is a fair play. Therefore, we have to define a life cycle for every project, and life cycle will be composed of a number of phases, and every phase you define must complete with all its activities yielding certain outputs which would be like ticked off as the completion of that phase, that has to be approved by the sponsor or the project board, and only when they allow you to move ahead you will move on to the next phase. This way you will also get these phase ends as phase gates, and a phase gate is something like a point to approve and move ahead to the next phase. This is a point which is also called a kill point, because if the management thinks that this project should not go any further due to any reason, maybe due to the performance of the project, due to the lack of funding, or some other reason, this is the point where they can decide to close the project or let it continue into the next phase. So every project management process produces one or more outputs. So if there are more than one things going on in a phase, then all of those outputs or deliverables of each phase or activity would add up to the deliverable of your phase. But as far as the process is concerned, project management process is concerned, that still will produce certain outputs, and we will use certain tools and techniques to do that, but then there can be a lot of parallelism in the processes. And we understand that output will always be a deliverable or a outcome. I differentiated output and outcome yesterday. I said if the deliverable which is coming out of a process or activity or work package, which could be product, service, or result, that is the deliverable, and that normally points towards the output of a project. When you talk about outcome, that is the ultimate result or the benefit ultimately realized out of our project or a program. So normally the word outcome is associated with the program, but at the same time I also said that every project, no matter if it is a part of a project or a program, every project has its benefits. The benefit will be realized no matter the project has been completed or it, it has not been completed. While a project is going on, you may start yielding some benefits, but even after the project is finished, the benefit realization process continues for a longer period of time. In case of programs, what we have learned is that we are within the program, we are responsible for yielding the benefits, for realizing the benefits of each project, and that is the responsibility of program. In case of a standalone project, probably the responsibility of the project manager finishes as soon as he delivers the project and it is accepted by the management. And the responsibility of realizing the benefits is passed on to someone else, maybe the sponsor, business analyst, or a program or whatsoever is taking over. Okay. So project management processes are logically linked by the outputs they produce. So the net of each process would be linked to that. Processes, as I said, I'm not talking about phases now, I'm talking about processes. Processes are overlapping activities. There can be a lot of overlap available, but in case of phases, we expect and we don't want the phases to overlap. And if that is the case, then the next question is, can the phases even overlap? Yes, of course, but not to the extent that two phases are starting together. But yes, a phase is yet not finished, it is under approval, and still you may be allowed to move on with your next phase. But if you do so, if you increase the parallelism, you are doing it at the risk of delaying the project or whatever, spending more money, and naturally you are losing your control. Okay, and once we are going to study each one of those processes of project management, like the 49 processes I told you, and which I said that those processes are all probably can be done in parallel. While one thing is happening, another thing could be happening right there, and it is not part of the project life cycle. Those processes will all have some input, some outputs, and naturally some tools and techniques to do those processes. These 49 processes will be discussed in detail in subsequent knowledge areas, and I'll explain how they interact, these knowledge areas and process groups, how do they interact and how these 49 processes work. But for each of those 49 processes, you will have some inputs, some outputs, and some tools and techniques. And this is going to be the general format in which we'll be discussing them. A number of process iterations and interactions between processes varies based on the needs of the projects. Therefore, we have already discussed that these processes can be tailored according to the requirement of the project. Processes generally fall into one of the three categories. Processes used once are at predefined points in the project. So the one-time activities, one-time processes. Then there are processes that are performed periodically. Like, you are submitting a report after every 1 day. That could be a periodic process which is repeating itself within the project. And the processes that are performed continuously throughout the project. There is something like you are keeping an eye on all the activities of the project. That is something which is happening throughout the project. Project management as is accomplished through the appropriate application and integration of logically grouped project management processes. So these 49 processes, how they are logically grouped and how they interact, that is the more important topic. As I said earlier, we have divided, PMI has divided these 49 processes into 5 process groups, and we must understand how these processes flow throughout the life of the project. Similarly, the same 49 processes can be viewed from another angle, and that is the 10 knowledge areas. Actually, each one of the process belongs to a parent knowledge area, that's parent specialization. So that knowledge area is also another way of looking at uh, where a process relate to which knowledge area, which specialization each process belongs to. Like there would be a knowledge area of scope, so a number of processes would be relating to scope. Then there could be processes which relate to time, or cost, or quality. So these are the knowledge areas. So we will also look at them from that angle. Okay, let me bring up another presentation in front of you, in which I'll explain how these project management process groups interact with each other. Let me bring that up. Okay, let me explain one more thing here before I can go over to that. If generally you ask me to explain what happens in each one of these 5 process groups, taking initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and close one by one. First of all, in initiation, I'm saying these are generally these things are done. Although when we were studying the content of the PMI exam, we also discussed each one of these process groups from the point of view of what are the different tasks are which are supposed to be done by the project manager. So, generally speaking, do not expect these points to be your your processes. These are not your processes, but they may indicate or point towards some processes. First of all, if you remember, we said whatever we do, whatever project we are doing, it has to be aligned with the organizational objectives as well as with the customer needs. So this is going to be done in initiation. When you are starting a project, when the responsibilities are being given, that is the point. The person responsible who has been made responsible for the project, that is the project sponsor, he first has to see, is the project aligned with the organizational objectives and customer needs? So it's a kind of a feasibility which will be held at that point in time, although not much detail, but still, before he can pass on the order to do this project, he has to be sure that whatever he is asking someone to do is doable. Then also, the preliminary scope statement includes the project stakeholder needs and expectations. As I discussed earlier, that as soon as the project charter is developed and the order for the project is given to the project manager, the first thing he can do is to identify the stakeholders and analyze them. This all happens much before the planning starts. So we have yet not started the planning, but preliminary scope statement is developed at that stage. So generally, stakeholder would also point out if there are any stakeholders indicated already and what are their needs and expectations. And naturally, the more detailed job of analyzing those stakeholders and identifying more stakeholders is the job of the project manager. In the charter, we also are supposed to provide, if any, very high level risks, assumptions, or constraints. they must be made understandable to the project manager. Project manager, after having received this order, this charter, which is truly approved by the project board, must identify the stakeholders and understand their needs. This much is enough to initiate a project. Then we move on to the next process group, which is planning. And out of the 49 processes, there are almost 24 processes just in planning. And each and every aspect of the project is to be planned in detail. Therefore, all the 10 knowledge areas, which are the specializations of project management, are planned here in thorough detail. Especially, the scope is agreed. Naturally, to agree on scope, you have to go through a number of steps, a number of processes have to be done as if the scope can be properly established. For developing a schedule and getting it approved is again a number of processes would be required to do that. A number of steps will be taken, activities are to be identified, they must be sequenced, there must be a duration estimate, the network diagramming, and ultimately the development of the schedule. Cost budget must be approved, and before the cost budget is approved, naturally we are going through the step of developing a cost management plan, making a detailed estimation for that. Project teams must be identified with their clear roles and responsibilities agreed and defined. Then how this team and other stakeholders would be able to communicate. A communication management plan has to be there. A quality management plan must be established. A risk management plan and risk response plan must be developed proactively, identifying all the possible risks which could come to your mind. Then you must prepare a change control system, a change management plan, which would help you control the changes along the way when you are in the monitoring and control and there is any change request, how to handle that. Procurements, the the, the work which you will conclude that cannot be done by your team, then how that work can be outsourced. This could be buying or procuring certain items from the market to getting some part of job done by some contractors, and so on and so forth. And naturally, all of these 10 knowledge areas, when they are properly planned, the plan have to be integrated into a comprehensive integrated project management plan, which must be approved by the executive. And ultimately, this can be put to use in execution. So that is planning. When we move to execution, as I had explained earlier, in execution, we are not supposed to be thinking a lot. All the job of thinking and planning had been done thoroughly during the planning. In execution, we just follow what we plan. I have no objection to any change request which may come, but in execution, project manager or whomsoever is executing the project is not allowed to make any changes by himself. Anything and everything which has to be changed will go through a proper change request process, and only then the plan is amended, and that is the job of monitoring and control. So in execution, you can only move a change request, but you can't change anything by yourself. You are just supposed to act upon the plan, and the main ingredient of the plan has been encapsulated into the approved scope and time and cost. If these things have been properly approved, have been baseline, this is what you are going to be executing. So in execution, you will achieve the project scope. The stakeholders, you will keep in touch with them through communication, and naturally, stakeholder expectations will be managed. Human resource will come on board, they can do the work and they can go back. So, human resource will be managed, other resources, naturally, they will be managed, quality will be managed, material resources are managed. So, all this is happening during the execution. But remember, a plan is just like, as a plan is to, sorry, as as a standard operating procedure is to normal operations, plan is to your project. So, in a way, you can say that you have to follow the plan as if it were a SOP. And I have given enough emphasis on the point that you cannot change anything while you are executing the project. And if at all there is a need to change something, you have to move the change request, and monitoring and control will approve that, and only then it can be executed. Well, there might be a question if um, we are we cannot do something and there is some emergency and you want to get the job done. We can't wait too long for a change request to get approved. Yes, it is a valid point, but the thing is, uh, how do you think that monitoring and control will take so much time? Probably because you think that monitoring and control will come after execution. But I have explained it already that all these processes are overlapping each other. So while we are executing, we are also monitoring and controlling the project at the same time. Therefore, as soon as execution notices some change request, is immediately sent to the monitoring and control. Naturally, if there is some priority to it, that decision can be made promptly and execution can immediately take action on it after the approval has been sought. In monitoring and control, this is your eyes and ears. You have to keep an eye on whatever is happening in execution. You already have your detailed project management plan, which is acting as a SOP for this project, and you would see what was supposed to be done in what was in the plan and what has been done in all the knowledge areas, and detailed analysis would be carried out for the for finding the variance, what could not be achieved and what has been overachieved. And for those changes which were not according to the schedule, an analysis will be carried out during monitoring and control by each one of the knowledge areas. And based on that, two things will be done. Number one, this analysis report will be submitted to the integration. And moreover, if there are any change requests, that is the second point, if there are any change requests as a result of this analysis, that will also be processed. The, the part where these change requests are processed is also done during the monitoring and control, and the process which does it is called integrated change control. Perform integrated change control. That is the process from where the final decision for the approval or rejection of a change request comes. And if so, if the change request has been approved, all the relevant plans would be amended and it will be informed to execution as if execution can start looking at the amended plan and acting upon it. In this, naturally, as I said, we will track the project and status must be communicated to the stakeholders. Changes are managed here. Quality is monitored and controlled. Risk is monitored and controlled. Everything, all the 10 knowledge areas are controlled here. Ultimately, once monitoring and control has been done successfully and there is nothing to be corrected, we don't have to go back to execution for getting something done or redone. Then we move on to the final step, and that is the closing of the project. This uh, the process group uh, is responsible for paper auditing the whole project management process and the deliverable which has been properly checked. This has to be handed over to the customer. Project outcomes are accepted. Project resources are no more needed now, so they will be released. Stakeholder perceptions will be measured and noted and analyzed for any future guidance, and ultimately the project would be formally declared closed. So, in addition to process group, processes are also categorized by knowledge areas. As I said, there are 10 knowledge areas. So, knowledge area is an identified area of project management. I said area of specialization, defined by its knowledge requirements and described in terms of its component processes, practices, inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques. Every knowledge area has its own purpose. Like time management or scheduling is for the timely completion of the project. Cost management is for doing the project within time, within specified cost. Although the knowledge area are interrelated, they are defined separately from the project management perspective. So these 10 knowledge areas identified in this guide are used in most projects most of the time. These are the 10 knowledge areas: project integration management, project scope management, schedule management, cost, quality, resource, which includes the human resource and other resources, communication, risk management, procurement management, and the stakeholder management. So we will be covering our course in exactly in these 10 knowledge areas in detail. But before we can do that, I will also like to go through each the interaction between these knowledge areas. So these are the 10 knowledge areas. Graphically are represented. These are the 10 knowledge areas. And I must mention here that integration is the parent of all. Out of the 10 knowledge areas, integration is the parent, and integration is that knowledge area where the project management plan is created. And that is created by combining all other knowledge areas, which are other 9 knowledge areas. Scope will have its own plan, time or schedule will have its own plan, and all these plans will be put together in form of a project management plan in integration. So whatever we do in whatever process group we are, actually whatever process we have for integration, there is the parent process in that process group for all the knowledge areas. So let me skip these basic definitions and move on to something where I can explain in a better way. Let me see what we have here. Okay, yes, exactly. This I wanted to show you. Just a minute.
Sure.
I'm sorry, the system has slowed down. My slides are not working. Just a minute, I'll just fix it.
No issues, not at all.
Okay, let's look at the process count. You see, I talked about 5 process groups and there are 49 total processes. Let us see how they are divided in these 5 process groups.
Right.
In initiation process group, we only have 2 processes out of 49. I'll talk about what those processes are, but I just wanted to show you the distribution. In planning, we have the maximum number of processes. There are 24 processes, which comes out to be almost 50% of the processes. In execution, we have 10, and in monitoring and control, we have 12. That monitoring and control takes care of about 25% of the processes. Similarly, execution is also about 23-24% of processes. Closing process group has only 1 process. So you see the majority of processes are lying in planning, execution and monitoring and control. Whereas in initiation and closing we just have 1 or 2 processes. But the maximum number of processes are held in planning, and then monitoring and control and execution are almost 10 and 12. As far as the knowledge areas are concerned, if I forget about the perspective of the processes, then in knowledge areas we have got 10 knowledge areas. Integration has 7 processes. Scope 6. Schedule also has 6 processes. Cost has 4 processes. 3 for quality, 6 for resource, 3 for communication, 7 processes for risk. Highest number are integration and risk. Second highest number are scope, schedule, and resource. And then procurement has 3, and stakeholder management has 4 processes. This totals up to the same 49 processes. So the processes are same. The same 49 processes can be viewed from 2 different windows, and one window is the 5 process groups and the other window is the 10 knowledge areas. Now let us see how they are mapped. So far so good. Are you following me?
Yes, I'm following completely.
So as I just explained that we have got 5 process groups and we have got 10 knowledge areas. If I can somehow map all of these things together, it will form a kind of a matrix, just as shown in front of you. I know you can't read anything on this, but I just wanted to show you certain things. Like you see, the columns we have here are initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and close. These are the 5 process groups. And if you look under these headings of initiation, you have got the processes written down there. For example, the first one is the develop charter. You go yet still down. Um, you have identify stakeholders. So there are these 2 processes. As I said before, I'll show you what exactly are the processes within each process group and within each knowledge area. So we have develop charter here, we have identify stakeholder here. These are the 2 things required to initiate a project. For planning, as I was saying, each one of the knowledge areas have to be planned in detail. So there is no knowledge area which has nothing in planning. Every knowledge area has something in planning. So it is heavily populated and there are a total of 24 processes. On the rows, on the other side of the matrix, you can see the knowledge areas, integration, scope, time, cost, quality, and so on. So you can see in front of the knowledge areas, again the same processes figured out there. Just hold on a minute, I have to take a call.
Sure, no issues.
I'm sorry, there was an important call I had to take. So, alright, so where we were talking about,
Not an issue, no problem.
how, these things look like. You see, in planning, we have got the maximum number of processes just because every knowledge area has to get planned. So, right in front of every knowledge area, you can clearly see that some planning processes do exist. Um, the difference is that some of the knowledge areas are planned just by one single process. Like you see, look at the integration. We just have one process, develop project management plan. Look at project quality management, that is plan quality management, plan resource management, plan communication management, plan procurement management, stakeholder engagement. So you see, there's some of the processes they have only one process for planning. But there are certain processes which have a number of processes. Like in scope, we have 4 processes for planning. In schedule, we have 5 processes for planning. Cost, we have 3 processes for planning. Resources, we have 2. And risk, we have 5 processes for planning. So wherever you see more number of processes, you can clearly say that these things are heavier, are more important than other knowledge areas because they are being planned in much more detail. So once that is established, that scope, schedule, cost, resource, and risk are more important and they are planned in more detail, let us see how much more detail and why are they important. First of all, let me take on the scope, schedule, and cost. Scope, schedule, and cost are basically known as the project objectives. Why? Because a project cannot be defined without scope or schedule, naturally time or cost. If you want a house to be constructed and if you give me the statement that your project is to construct this house, I will not be clear what you mean. I know you want to construct a house, but I don't know how big the house will be, how much you will spend on it, and how much time is there. So this is a very vague statement. I am constructing a house. So to clarify the statement, you have to tell that this is a 3 bedroom house which I want to construct within 6 months period at a cost of this much money. So you see, some semblance of sense should be there in the basic definition of that project, and that could only be through defining these 3 objectives: scope, schedule, and cost. And that is exactly why they are more important than others. The quality and resource and communication, all that will automatically become a part of the scope, time, and cost. They would be inclusive in it. But these 3 things have to be explained to define the project itself. That is one of the reasons why these 3 things, 3 knowledge areas, are much more detailed and much more important than others. Then we have got so many processes in risk. Why do we have so many processes in risk? Risk has a different reason. Risk is something which we are not sure that it will occur. So we will try to identify as many risks as possible, but we are not sure that all of the risks or some of the risks will occur or will not occur. But we want to be proactive, we want to be ready. We first identify all the possible risks, then we thoroughly analyze them through qualitative and quantitative means. And once we have done that, then we prepare ourselves with a risk response. So we plan all this. But you see, this portion, all of this portion is not going to be implemented. Why? Because there would be certain risks which will not occur at all. Whereas the activities I plan to do to construct the house will definitely be done. The money I have established will definitely be spent. The scope will definitely be completed. So we were sure about scope, time and cost. But here in risk, we plan in much detail just because of the reason that we want to cover all ground, but at the same time, the, we are uh, we are not sure which of the risks will occur and which will not. That is the reason risk is given more important. Then we have got in resource we have got two processes: plan risk management and estimate activity resources. Why is it so? Uh, to explain that, I have to tell you that this project, whatever project you are doing, once you come to a certain granularity level, you have to estimate. And there are three things which have to be estimated. Once I know what the activities are, I have to calculate the duration, estimate the duration of each activity. I have to estimate the cost of each activity. And the third thing is I have to estimate the resources. So estimation is of three kinds. That is time, cost, and resource. So because I have to go into the detail of resource estimation, so therefore resource estimate activity resources is an additional process there. Rest, all the knowledge areas have only one process. Stakeholder engagement, procurement, management. So all of these have just one process: communication, quality, and integration. The five knowledge areas have only one process. So putting them all together in planning, I have 24 processes, and you can clearly see the distribution uh, in planning of all the knowledge areas. Like you see, in planning there is one integration process. There are uh, four scope processes, five schedule processes, three cost processes, and so on and so forth. But one thing is sure, that everything, no, intersection point is blank. Like in the case of initiation, we had nothing in front of scope, we had nothing in front of schedule, cost, and everything. We just had developed charter in initiation. We just had developed charter in front of integration and identify stakeholder in front of stakeholder management. Rest, there was no process required. But in planning, there is a process required, at least one process required for everything. Each one of the 10 knowledge areas, they are planned in detail. If that is clear, let's move on to execution and see what happens there. Here we have got a mixed kind of
Sure.
we do find certain blank spaces here in front of scope, in front of schedule, in front of cost. These are the three areas which are, like, not present in execution. That gives us an impression that probably scope and time and cost are not to be executed. Isn't it strange that these three most important things, which we call project objectives, why are they not being executed? I'll discuss that, but before, let's see what other processes are doing here in execution. As far as the integration is concerned, we are having two processes here: direct and manage project work and manage project knowledge. So, integration is doing something. Scope, time, and cost, we don't find any process here. Quality is managing the quality. As far as the resources are concerned, we have got a number of activities there. We acquire the resources, then we develop the team, then we manage the team. Come in communication, whatever the communication management plan you have developed in planning, you are managing those communications. For risk, whatever the risk response you have developed in planning, you are implementing those risk responses, whichever risk happens, because all the risks are not going to occur. So whichever risk occurs, we are ready for that. For procurements, whatever procurements are to be done, you conduct the procurements. I mean, you award the contracts, do the selection and all that in execution. And stakeholders, you manage the needs and expectations of the stakeholders, you keep them engaged. Now, coming back to the question, why there is no process of scope, time, and cost in execution? Because these three areas were the most important areas, and the whole project will revolve around these three things because they are the project uh, objectives. So we cannot take a chance in skipping any one of these things. Moreover, these three things, these three knowledge areas, all the processes of these three knowledge areas have to be put together and have to be executed in unison. We cannot just complete the scope without the schedule or without spending the money. So, though these three plans will have to be baseline, they have to be approved first, scope, schedule, and cost, but they also will be integrated into the project management plan, and the responsibility of the execution of scope, time, and cost would be carried by integration. So, in execution, you see on top the integration process, direct and manage project work. This process takes on the responsibility of executing jointly all the aspects of scope, time, and cost. Remaining knowledge areas will do their job separately, that is additional job. While the project is being done, manage quality, for example, would assure the quality of whatever is happening. Resource management will make sure the resources are made available as if the things can be done according to the scope, time, and cost. And every other knowledge area is just a support function. The core function is scope, time, and cost, and they are being integrated and they are being conducted and executed but through the process direct and manage project work, that is the integration process. Is it clear?
Yes, I'm following completely. Yes.
Now the next is the monitoring and control. This process group has got a number of processes here. Again, there are 12 processes here, but there are no gaps. Like in execution, which had 10 processes but 3 gaps, there was nothing in scope, nothing in schedule, and nothing in cost. But here, amazingly, in monitoring and control, though the processes, there is only one process almost in every knowledge area except for integration and scope. The first two, integration and scope, have both two processes each. But remaining, all the knowledge areas have just one process, and the name is usually control schedule, control cost, control quality, control resources, and so on and so forth. And there are some names starting with monitor, monitor communication, monitor risk, monitor stakeholder engagement. So this is all about monitoring and control. What does it say? It represents that every knowledge area has to be monitored and controlled. Every knowledge area, integration included. So this is going to be ensuring, analyzing, ensuring that everything in project management plan is being executed. Moreover, whatever is being executed, is it behind behind or ahead of the schedule or cost? And if there is a variance, is it a positive or negative variance? Then it analyzes how bad the situation is or how good the situation is and how to bring it back on track. This is the job of all these controls. So all the controls will be doing, collecting the data, analyzing it, and then suggesting respectively change requests from their perspective. Any knowledge area can move a change request after this analysis. Even from execution also, direct and manage project work process can also move a change request which does not even require an analysis. If work is held up due to some problem, we need to change it. So as soon as a work we we see that work is about to be held, we should move the change request as if an early action is taken. And naturally, we move it on priority. Other change requests, which are generated from monitoring and control, they can wait because they probably will be created in detail and processed uh, as per the priority they are allocated. But generally, the execution change requests are uh, more important, higher on priority. Now you see, as far as the integration is concerned, we have got two processes. One is monitor and control project work, and the other is perform integrated change control. As far as the monitor and control project work is concerned, I would like to call it the chief analyst. And the other process, the perform integrated change control, I would rather call it chief controller. So because integration is always parent of all other processes within that knowledge area, within that process group. So these two processes here are parents. Monitor and control project work is the parent of the analysis. So all the analysis going on in any one of these controls underneath would be consolidated by monitor and control project work. So the data coming from execution and the project plan coming from plan would be compared by each one of these controls, and they will analyze, and the work from execution, the data which is coming is called work performance data. This work performance data, after getting analyzed and processed, becomes work performance information. Data becomes information. So work performance information is sent to monitor and control project work, which is the chief analyst, and it is responsible for putting it all together in form of a work performance report, which is a consolidated report of all what is happening. And this report can be used at several places. Even when we are trying to process a change request, this work performance report could be helpful. And especially, this is helpful for managing teams in execution. That is, in execution, if you look in front of project resource management, 9.5 is managed team. How the teams are being managed, because it all depends upon how well they are performing. So their work report is work performance report. That work performance report is sent back to execution as if the supervisor can treat the teams and individuals accordingly. If they're not performing well, they could be instructed to do better. So that is all due to the chief analyst, which I am calling, which is monitor and control project work. Now, all the change requests, whether they are being initiated from execution or monitoring and control, any process of monitoring and control can initiate a change request. So, change requests are all going to one single point, one process, and that is, I called it the chief controller. It is called perform integrated change control. So, no matter from where the change request is coming, all the change requests are landing here at one single point, perform integrated change control, and the responsibility of taking action on that change request is of this process. So the change requests which are received here, they will get processed. Some of them will be approved, some will be rejected, some will be pended, or so on and so forth. So the decision about the change request is taken here. Okay, that much. Then we move on to scope. Before I can talk about scope, let me explain what execution had done. Execution did the job as per the plan. And what is the output of execution? If the job has been done according to the plan, some work would have been done and some outputs would have come out. So the deliverables are coming to monitor and control. Moreover, whatever data is generated about the work during the execution, that is also being sent to monitoring and control. So there are two types of things coming: a report, data about the work, and the deliverables. No matter they are good or bad, but they are coming to monitoring and control. Out of the 12 processes in monitoring and control, only two processes have to do something with the deliverable. A deliverable, when reaches monitoring and control, the very first process which deals with a deliverable, meaning we need to check it whether it is okay or not. So the first process is 8.3, control quality. Quality control is a function which is carried out on each deliverable, and it is going to check for the correctness of the deliverable. If there is anything wrong with the deliverable, that would be rejected. That would be counted as a defective item. And then execution will have to fix that. That item which has been rejected will have to be even remade or reworked. Once the quality control is verified, is passed, there is one final check for the deliverable, and that is validate scope in scope. Validate scope is responsible for checking the completeness of the product. The correctness has already been checked by the quality control. Now the validate scope is going to check through a checklist if all the features which were supposed to be there in the product are there or not. And if they are, then the deliverable is finally called the accepted deliverable. This is the user acceptance testing happening here. So if it passes this test, then deliverable is ready to be delivered to the customer. And control scope deals with the other process in scope. Control scope deals with the work which has been done. So scope of the process, or you can say project scope, is checked through control scope, and product scope is checked through validate scope. Then we have one control in each one of these processes. You can find only one difference. Somewhere in some of the processes run control schedule, control cost, control quality, control resource, and control procurement. But there are three which are monitor communication, monitor risk, and monitor stakeholder engagement. The simple rule is the control is for non-living objects and monitor is for living objects. You control things. You do not control people. You monitor people. So all these controls, all these checks which are human related, like communication, like stakeholder, and like risk, they are monitor communications, monitor risk, and monitor stakeholder engagement. Rest everything is control. And what is the job of these controls and monitors is, again, I would say the project management plan which we prepared in the planning is compared against the work performance data generated from execution, and the difference between the two is called variance. This variance is noted and further analyzed how damaging is it to the project, and then it analyzes how to correct it. So the result is work performance information which goes back to monitor and control project work for consolidation into a work performance report, while the deliverables from execution, they land up to quality control. If passes, it is called verified deliverable. This is then sent to validate scope, and if that passes, it is called accepted deliverable, meaning the user acceptance testing has been done. So you see, if there are any change requests and they are approved, they will definitely amend the plans, the project management plan and all the documentation which had been created, and therefore this change has to be intimated to execution as if it can keep working now on the new plan, on the amended and updated plan. And you will keep cycling between execution and monitoring and control until and unless everything has been put right, everything has been done to the satisfaction. And once that is done, then therefore you will not have any place to go back. There is nothing to do in execution, so you will move forward. So the cycle is broken between the execution and monitoring. The cycle is broken, and ultimately we move on to closing, and then we do the post-mortem of the project, the paper post-mortem, and we do the paper audits. We check everything has been done and completed, documents are complete, documents are handed over to the organization, and the deliverable or the end product is given over to the customer. So you see, we have quickly gone through all the 49 processes. We have understood the number of processes in each knowledge area and number of processes in each process group. We have understood the exact names of each process and where it lies in the matrix of process groups and knowledge areas. And this is the big picture which shows everything what is where. But I will not recommend that you learn this table by heart. Definitely, you will have to reproduce this table. You will have to refer to this table at many points, but don't try to remember it, or cram it. Try to understand why is anything there. What is the purpose of each and every item here? And if you will understand that, it will be much easier for you to even replicate this chart through your memory. I am not really asking you to do that, but for the purposes of practical project management, you must be able to place each item at exactly where it is supposed to be done. Naturally, we are going to study it in further detail, and naturally, after having covered this course, everything in your mind will fall in place, and you will be able to earmark where a certain process goes. But for the time being, I am just instructing you not to cram it, because cramming has its disadvantages. You will forget, uh, you will mix up certain things, and then everything will be topsy-turvy, and we don't want that to happen. Ji, I stop here and I wait for your comments.
No, it's fine. I'm following it. It's okay for me.
Okay. Next few slides are just the enlargement of the same chart. I prefer the big chart, therefore I explained everything on the big chart. But if something was not readable, you could have, you can always read through the further explanations. Okay. Before moving on, let me open up another file and show you the interaction.
Just one thing just popped up in my mind, if I can ask.
Yeah.
In this table, you mentioned that in the close of the project, we only have one process there. Generally, in the project, we have, I mean, when we talk about closing a project, we talk about acceptance and, certain things related to the financial closing of the project as well. But here in the closing, I don't see anything linked with, the financial part. So, shouldn't there be for example, a financial closure also, something linked with cost management in the last knowledge area?
Actually,
Sorry, in the last process group.
that all has been taken care in monitoring and control. Every, the financial closure or whatever, the accounts are settled in monitoring and control. The cost control will make sure that everything has been done correctly. So basically, the monitoring and control is responsible for that. Closure is just a formality. Here we are more concerned about doing a paper audit of whatever has been done. If something has missed out, some signature have not been there, some procedure has not been followed. So those abnormalities are covered here. And secondly, um what do you call? Yes, the lessons learned are recorded here. In Clojure,
Right. Right.
we record all the lessons learned and hand those over to the organization. So whatever is the leftover of the project, because the day the project is closed, there will be nothing left behind. So whatever is left over is also handed over to the organization. If there is a material or
Right.
something. So this has to be handed over back to the organization as if the project can be declared closed.
Right.
Okay, let me bring that other file. Okay, I'm sorry for the delay because I was trying to search this diagram.
No issue.
Actually, I have created this diagram to explain whatever uh, we were discussing on the on the matrix. Now, what is this diagram about? This is not given in PMB. Okay, I have created by myself. This shows how the five process groups interact with each other. You see, here we don't talk about what is happening within a process group, but what is required to be input to our process group and what is coming out of a process group and where it is going. If you understand this, where there are no processes as such, only we are talking about the process groups, still if you can understand this flow, probably you have understood half of the project management already. So these gray boxes, if you can probably see where my cursor is, can you see this red dot?
Yes, yes, now I can see.
Okay, so the gray box is like initiation. This is planning process group. This is execution. This is this large one is monitoring and control. And last is the closing. So let us start from initiation process group. Let us see what all we require to start initiation. So it is normally initiated by the project sponsor. Project sponsor has been assigned the responsibility of this project, and who is project sponsor? He is generally, in our world, it is called project director or someone like that. So project sponsor is going to prepare the charter and assign it to a project manager. This would happen during initiation, but some pre-project documentation would be carried along with the project sponsor into initiating process group as if the charter can be prepared and other work can be carried out. Those documents which he brings along with him in initiation are number one, the business documents, and number two are the agreements. What are the business documents? There are two types of business documents, different types of documents. Number one is the business case itself. That is the reason why we have agreed to do this project. So that reason, along with its proof and documentation, is brought in for initiation for development of the charter. Naturally, that is an important document. The other business document is the benefit management plan. If you remember, I did tell you that whether project manager is responsible for benefits or not, every project has some benefits to realize. They may not be all realized during the life of the project, but they will extend beyond the life of the project, and maybe they are extending many years beyond. Therefore, project manager cannot be held responsible for all the benefits. So, how the benefits out of this project are ultimately going to be managed, that is a benefit management plan which would have been prepared already. Is not the responsibility of project manager. Maybe it is prepared by the business analyst. So this benefit management plan and the business document, and the other one is uh, the business case. Business case and benefit management plan are the business documents. Then what is an agreement? Agreement could take any form. It could be an order from within the organization to do this project for another department, and this through this letter, our memorandum of understanding, our agreement, or whatever it is, it has been assigned to us. Or maybe we, as an organization, have been contracted to do this job, and we have a formal contract with the customer based on which this project is being done. So whatever is the understanding, is the agreement, some memorandum of understanding, agreements, contracts, whatever they are, those documentations also be input into the initiation process. And naturally, the first job is of the sponsor himself. He would, you know, create the project charter, the, that is the order for project manager to mobilize its resources and give it to the project manager. So if you remember, we had two processes in initiation. One was develop project charter. So in light of these documents, that project charter will be developed and given to the project manager, and then it will be the responsibility of the project manager to quickly scan through and create, identify a complete list of all the stakeholders and see uh, who stands where. That is, analysis of the stakeholder is also done here in initiation. What else is being input into initiation? In initiating process group, we have something coming from our organization, enterprise or organization. These are the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. Now, why I was not showing this, this diagram was not there in the sequence of slides which I was showing, is because it is there at the end of the second chapter. But because the organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors are explained in the second chapter. Second chapter is all about them. So after that, to understand these two things, you would understand that these two things are required by every process group. So you see, an arrow is going from organization to initiation, another arrow is going to planning, another arrow is going to execution, another arrow is going to monitoring and control, and they are all two arrows, another going to closing. So all the process groups, all the process groups are getting organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. And within each process group, all the processes will also be getting these two things. So this is so important. That is, this is being input to everywhere. And then we have a third arrow is coming into the initiation process group is from planning, and that is called the procurement documents. We will discuss it a bit later, but for the time being, I hope you understand what is happening in initiation process group. We are doing two jobs. Developing the charter, it is the job of the project sponsor. And once that is done and the project manager has been assigned and given the responsibility, project manager puts in the effort to identify the stakeholders and analyze them and prioritize them. This is
Right.
done during initiation. But remember, this job has not finished. Stakeholders are not to be identified and analyzed only once. This is a continuous process, and we will keep recognizing and identifying new stakeholders. We will keep analyzing and reviewing the old stakeholders, and we will keep refreshing the list of stakeholders, which is called a stakeholder register. And we'll keep developing and amending the stakeholder management strategy, how we intend to deal with those stakeholders. So this is the output of the stakeholders, identification of stakeholders, and charter was developed. This also is sent to planning. So charter goes from initiation to planning, and stakeholder registers also go from initiation to planning, and naturally planning can start its work based on these documents plus the organizational process assets and enterprise boundary factors, plus the requirements coming from the customer, plus any common teaming agreement between your organization and the customer. There are certain jobs which both parties will jointly do. Maybe I will create a document and customer will check it. Maybe this is kind of a interaction. So such like teaming agreements, as if both parties are bound to respect the limits laid down. So teaming agreements could be done, and they can also be input to the planning. So you see, all the arrows getting into the planning have been explained. You have charter coming, you have stakeholder register coming, you have organized process assets and enterprise non factors coming, you have teaming agreements coming, you have requirements coming, and you also have the resource calendars, all the resources which have so far been made available during planning. They their availability calendars, when those resources are going to be available, when they are not going to be available, will automatically become available. So with these inputs, we enter planning. What do we do in planning? As you remember, it was a heaviest populated process group, and there were 24 processes in it. And each one of the 10 knowledge areas was planned in detail, and especially more detail, it was scope, time, and cost, and up to some extent, risk for a different purpose. So in planning, whatever we create and whatever we produce, this all contributes towards the project management plan. So whatever we are doing in 24 processes, ultimately that is to be consolidated into the project management plan. So my output here is project management plan. So from this arrow you can see we have got arrows going to monitoring and control. The same arrows are going to execution and also to the closing. So these three arrows are taking along the project management plan. Project management plan from planning, which has been created from planning, is shared with every process of execution, every process of monitoring and control, and every process of closing. So everybody knows and everybody needs the project management plan which had been created during planning. For execution, as if they can act upon it. For monitoring and control, as if they can check it. And for closing, to do the final audit and close the project. So project management plan is important. But you see, project management plan is not everything which has been created during planning. Actually, there are two things. One is the project management plan and other is the project documents. So what are these project documents? You see in the middle of the chart, there is an archive shown as project documents. So what is being kept here and what is being kept in the project management plan? Project management plan is basically composed of two things. Number one, within the project management plan, we write the procedure and the guideline of doing everything. How the scope will be done, how the cost or the schedule or each one of the knowledge areas, all about it, the guideline. But actual work, according to this guideline, will also happen in planning, and the documents created out of it would become the part of project documents. Naturally, these project documents will be reused for creating even something else and then something else, and ultimately you will have the final shape ready, which is ready for execution. So that could be a single chart, a single schedule, but making that schedule, you have created so many other documents which are not required at this stage except for compiling it into a schedule. Now the executable form is this schedule, or for that matter, we have three baselines. We have the scope baseline, we have the schedule baseline, and we have the cost baseline. The schedule baseline is this chart. Cost baseline is the allocation of the budget, and scope baseline is the product and project scope we have established. So all these baselines are included in the project management plan. Rest everything we created, like, I had a list of activities, I had a list of milestones, I had a various estimates for cost and duration and resources. All those things are no more necessary. They are just put into the project documents, and they will only be referred when required. They will only be referred when required. Otherwise, the executable form is the project management plan, which is already being shared with all of these three process groups. Now, what else is going out of planning? You see, there is an arrow coming to execution, and what is written on it? This is make or buy decision and source selection criteria. What is a make or buy decision? Once we have planned everything, now we analyze that all the work we have identified, are we able to do all that work all by ourselves, or we have to procure certain items or services from other outside sources? If that be the case, and naturally that will be the case, if not wholly but partially, sometimes you're constructing a house, you have to get uh, cement and sand from somewhere. You are not going to create it by yourself. So there are certain procurements which have to be done of raw material, or for that matter, sometimes there is a job you think you can't do by yourself. For example, I need a carpenter or a plumber to fix all my piping in the house. So this has to be outsourced to a plumber. Maybe I can't do it myself. So such like jobs are to be outsourced. So when I have all my activities, I would like to see to carry out a make or buy decision, which would be to find which are the jobs I can do myself or which have to be outsourced. This is called the make or buy decision. So whatever you have decided to outsource, you also are supposed to develop a source selection criteria for that and develop certain procurement documents like RFP, RFI, etc. So all those documents are created and procedures are created in planning, and they are sent to execution, because actually the contract award process, the whole process of procurement actually happens during execution. Now the procurement documents I had created, I will send them back to initiation. Why? Because based on these procurement documents, there might be some new stakeholders which need to be identified. So the stakeholders I have already identified. At that point in time, I did not know what job I'll do by myself and what job is to be done by the contractor. And now that I know it, I am sending these procurement documents back to initiation as if more stakeholders could be identified and they would be the prospective contractors for me. So this is the reason for sending this line downwards to execution and one line carrying the procurement documents back to initiation for identification of stakeholders. Then we have everything planning has to do has done. Now we move on to execution, and in execution we are supposed to follow the plan. We cannot change it. We cannot change it by ourselves, and it is just like a SOP to us, and we have to strictly abide by it. So in execution, if I have a problem, I can move a change request to the monitoring and control, and they will promptly respond me back. You see, look here, approved change request would come back to execution, and the plans would have been amended by then. So in this cycle, your change request will be approved. But what else we are sending out of execution? As I said, we are sending out the change request. Yes, we are sending out a deliverable. And what do you remember? What happens to the deliverable? This deliverable has two stop journey in monitoring and control. The first stop is manage quality, where the quality assurance is carried out, and sorry, quality first stop is quality control. Quality assurance is actually happening in execution. So on deliverable, the first stop is quality control. If the deliverable is cleared from there, it is called verified deliverable, and then it is sent for scope validation. And validate scope process, what it will do, validate scope process will check it from a checklist. This is called the user acceptance testing. So this is actually happening in monitoring and control. So deliverable which was sent from execution to monitoring and control has passed through these stages. Change request, as I said, has gone to integrated change control for further processing, and if approved, it will come back as approved change request. And the third thing is work performance data. Whatever is happening in execution, whatever news are being generated about the work, they are called work performance data. So work performance data is sent to monitoring and control, and in monitoring and control, each and every control will receive this work performance data. Each and every control also has already gotten the project management plan. Now they don't need anything else. They can just compare the two things and find the variance, trend analysis, forecasting, whatever they want to do, whatever kind of analysis that is supposed to be done will be done there. And as in light of that, if there is a requirement for moving a change request, any control in monitoring and control for any knowledge area can feel free to move a change request on its own and submit its analysis in form of the work performance information to the chief analyst, which was monitor and control project work. Now this person is going to uh, compile this work performance information into work performance report, a one consolidated picture of the whole project. And this work performance report, a copy of that will go to integrated change control for change request processing, and the other copy goes back to execution, and in execution it goes to manage team, as if the team can be rewarded or punished, or whatever you have to do with the team, it is all done in execution. The human resources are dealt with during execution, not in monitoring and control. So you see, if the quality change request has been approved, the plans are respectively amended, and execution is informed. Quality control measurements, once they are being carried out, they are good for checking the deliverable, all right. Quality control is good for checking the deliverable, but at the same time, whatever we are checking here can have a big impact on the managed quality process in execution. You see, without that process, in execution, quality management is totally confusing, because the quality manager is trying to assure the quality by hit and trial. He is going to check each and every process, how is it happening, how it can be improved, is there a bug in it, and so on and so forth. But he doesn't exactly know where the problem lies. But once we are doing the quality control, the measurements we receive out of it are very indicative of the cause of the problem. Therefore, this is an important document which has to be sent back. Quality control measurement. These are sent back to execution where managed quality takes full advantage out of it and corrects and improves its processes promptly. Selected sellers, this box I just left out. In during execution, when we are outsourcing, so we ask for the proposals, seller sends us the proposals, we evaluate them, and ultimately award the contract to one of the contractors. So this cycle is the process of selecting the sellers. Now, once the sellers have been identified and the contracts have been signed, the list of selected sellers and the contract is also sent to monitoring and control as if procurement can be managed. And until and unless there is a change, we will keep reverting back to execution. And so the cycle continues between execution and monitoring and control, and until and unless everything has been cleared. Deliverable has been qualified. Deliverable is okay, accepted, and there is no more work. In that case, we go to the closing process group, and closing process group is then responsible for paper auditing whatever has been done during the project and for compiling these results. And once that is done, the deliverable is handed over to the customer, and the lessons learned and all the organizational process assets are being updated to OPAs or EEFs. So this is the whole cycle explained. Any questions about it?
No, there is no direct question. Just of course, I will need to read more to understand more details. But of course, generally it's fine.
Okay. Let me get back to our own presentation.
Right.
I think I should copy this slide there. Right, Jeep. After having understood that, there is a small portion in PMBOK about the PM data and information which I've just explained, that work performance data is generated out of execution. This data is sent to monitoring and control. Monitoring and control, every control uses this data to compare it with the project management plan. Once that has been done, the processed data is called the information which is coming out of it, that is work performance information. This work performance information goes to monitor and control project work, which compiles it into a work performance report. That is the journey of the project management data to information to report, and it has several sources, uses. Throughout the life cycle of a project, a significant amount of data is collected, analyzed, and transformed. Project data are collected as a result of various processes and are shared within the project team. The collected data are analyzed in context, aggregated, and transformed to become project information during various processes. So every control is doing this. Every control in its own capacity is analyzing, aggregating, and transforming work performance data into work performance information. Information is communicated verbally or stored and distributed in various formats as reports. Throughout the life cycle of a project, a significant amount of data is collected, analyzed, and transformed. Project data are collected as a result of various processes is the same thing. Sorry, yeah. So these are the three different um, types of work performance. One is data, information, and report. And I have just explained it to you still again. This is the basic definition of the data, the raw observation and measurement identified during activities. So to put in layman's language, this is the raw data which is created out of execution. And work performance information is the processed data which, as a result of the processing by the monitoring and control processes, the controls, various controls, they all convert them into work performance information. So that information, there would be one coming from scope, one coming from time, one coming from cost, and so on and so forth. They all are then compiled together into in form of a report, and that is called work performance report. So generally speaking, executing processes create the work performance data. Controlling processes process them and convert that data into information. All the such informations go to the monitor and control project work, which converts it into work performance report. Now, based on the work performance report, what all you can do? Uh, First of all, let's take the path of the change request. Uh, First of all, we evaluate uh, whether this change is required or not. Well, this is a question which I have not addressed so far. I said that there are three project objectives: scope, time, and cost, and whole of the executable plan is defined by scope, time, and cost. So if I can plan and freeze scope and time and cost, they could be integrated into the whole project, and execution would be according to them. Rest everything are just guidelines. But this is what is to happen. So, having said that, change in a project is only when any one of these three objectives or baselines are disturbed. If you think that there is a need for change, maybe you have to replace a person. You, on every such situation, you must question yourself: will it impact my scope? Will it impact my schedule? Will it impact my cost? If you think that there is absolutely no effect on scope or time or cost, then this is not a fit case for change request. Meaning what? If there is no impact on scope, time and cost, it cannot be called a change request. But if any one of these areas is being impacted, it has to be converted into change request, and that change request has to go to perform integrated chain control, where chain control will decide which change requests have been approved and which have been rejected. Only the approved change requests will be sent back to execution, and they will be communicated, and they are communicated to the project team as well as the stakeholders. So this was the long path where the change control has decided, form integrated monitoring control project work has decided that there is a change request because scope, time or cost are being impacted, and we need to have this change request, and then that change request is sent to perform integrated chain control, which will decide on the fate. If the change request is approved, then whatever amendments are to be made in the project plan or whatever documents that is made, and this message is communicated to all the project team members and stakeholders. Now let us assume.
Right. Just a small question here. When we say that there is a certain change that does not that does not impact the scope or the time or the change. So in other words, we are saying that if there is a minor change, we would accommodate that by itself if it is not affecting these three matrices.
Exactly. If you mean by minor change, any change which is not affecting the scope, time and cost, then that is the prerogative of the project manager to take a decision on that. Because
right,
it is not impacting my scope or time or cost. But if my scope or time or cost is being impacted, because that has been baselined by my boss, I have to get back to him. He
right,
gives me the permission to move ahead or not. Now, let us take the case where there is no change, no need for change request. Then naturally, I have just said that you don't need to have any permissions. You are at liberty as a project manager to, amend the respective plans and communicate the news to the project team and stakeholders. There is even a third scenario where there is no change at all. It is just a matter of sending in some instructions for corrective action or preventive action to the teams. So this is a pure communication. No documents are amended according to that. So such like thing will happen directly by communicating to the respective teams and the stakeholders. They must be informed. As far as tailoring is concerned, PMI is a great advocate for tailoring all the practices which have been given in PMBOK. PMI says that you can accommodate, you can convert that into your own requirement. This is just a guideline. The last line of this slide says, this guide itself is not methodology. So project managers apply a project management methodology to their work. And PMBOK is not a methodology. Time and again, we are emphasizing on this point. PMBOK is not a methodology. PMBOK is a framework. It is a general guideline. So based on this guideline, anyone can create a project management methodology in their own organization. And what a methodology is, Methodology is a system of practices, techniques, procedures, and rules used by those who work in a discipline. So, methodology is more detailed than the guideline or the standard. Guideline or standard is just pointing you in the right direction, and methodology is a step-by-step guide of doing that practice. For that purpose, for addressing the 9 knowledge areas in detail, as I said earlier, part 2 of this PMBOK guide is dedicated for standard for project management, is dedicated for the process groups. Although the first part explains each knowledge area in a chapter, there is a separate part 2, which deals with each of the process groups. So if you want to look at it from that direction, that is also available. That knowledge is also available. We already understand the definition of good practice, and we need to see that we have the good practices mentioned by PMBOK, a guide to project management body of knowledge, outlines a number of good practices. But this is your prerogative to develop your own methodology based on whatever good practices you want. Maybe some of the good practices given in PMBOK you think does not apply to you, so you can skip those. It is your prerogative to pick and drop whichever processes are you think they are good for you. So out of these many good practices, you can pick and choose for your own methodology. These methodologies can be developed by experts. Maybe you can have a ready-made methodologies created by someone else. Like, there are many organizations who create their own methodologies and then they sell them like a commodity. This could be obtained from professional associations. Maybe Pakistan Engineering Council provides you a methodology for doing the construction projects. Acquired from government agencies. This could have been acquired from some government agency, some policy or procedure has been adopted or acquired. The appropriate project management processes, inputs, tools, and techniques, and life cycle phases should be selected to manage a project. This selection activity is known as tailoring project management to the project. Project manager collaborates with the team, sponsor, organization management. So all these people, project manager is supposed to collaborate. In some cases, organization may require specific project management methodologies be used. कुछ काम ऐसे होते हैं. Some of the activities project management manager will decide and will require certain specific certain specific task methodology. Otherwise, sometimes you can live without a methodology. Why do we intend to tailor? Tailoring is necessary. Each project is unique and different. Therefore, tailoring should address the competing constraints of scope, schedule, cost, resource, quality, and risk, etc. Importance of each constraint is different from each project, and the project manager tailors the approach for managing these constraints based on the project environment, organizational culture, and stakeholder needs and other variables. Then the governance differs from organization to organization. Culture of one organization is different from other organization. So this also tailoring. This is the second reason that we may need to have our own methodologies, our own adoption of PMBOK in our own organizations in whatever way we find it fit. Sound project management methodologies take into account the unique nature of the project and allow tailoring to some extent by the project manager. However, tailoring that is included in the methodology may still require additional tailoring for a given project. I have created a methodology for my organization as if I'll be following the same procedure for every project in the organization. But the project I'm trying to do is not fully covered there. So therefore, uh, I can even tailor that. Project managers needs to ensure that the project management approach captures the intent of the business. These two documents, business documents, I've already explained to you, the business case and the benefit management plan. These are the two things, and this is the definition in front of you. If you can see this.
Yes.
So I have already explained these two terms. You can see the book definition. Project sponsor is generally accountable for the development and maintenance of the project business case document. Project sponsor is the responsible person for creating the business document, meaning what? The basic feasibility of a project after business case is already prepared. Before the project starts, sponsor is responsible for creating this document, business case, and he would decide how we go about it. This is an example of the life cycle, the milestones, and the phases and all that, which we have already talked about.
Sir, one question here. How do we define the project sponsor? I mean, is he supposed to be somebody from the executive committee, or a program manager can be a project sponsor, or how do we theoretically define a sponsor?
Yes, exactly. You are right. There has to be one single person assigned by the organization who is your boss. And in different scenarios, your boss may change. If this project is under a program, then program manager is your sponsor. If this is a standalone project, then somebody has been assigned to this project, some project director has been made responsible or accountable for this project, and he may be looking after 2, 3 more projects, but you are answerable to him. So in that case,
Right.
that respective project sponsor, project stakeholder will be declared as a sponsor, or it can depend upon your organizational policy.
Right.
I think there is nothing more important here. We have already talked about the business case and all that. Okay, I would rather like to move on, but before we can start on the next chapter, I would like you to have a break of about 20 minutes, and then we'll get back to it. Is it okay? Yeah, are we doing the break?
Yes, please. Let's get back 11:30 then.
11:30, yes. Okay, then take care.
Okay, right. Thank you very much.
After
Thank you.
this session, I'll start another session then.
Fine.